So I never really expected that we would talk about armadillos pooping on people, possibly league officials, and possibly giving people leprosy during the course of a match. But that's the beauty of Josh Wolff doing his second press availability in 36 hours. Of course, the first one came after Wednesday night's 1-0 victory over Houston. And then the second was on Friday morning here where three of us showed up. It was you, it was me, it was Colby. No TV people whatsoever.
Nope.
And obviously, there's a Sporting KC game tomorrow, but Friday is a difficult time to get TV folks out there. And
Look,
obviously, we had just,
yeah.
yeah,
Phil, people are going to want to crack jokes and everything, but we got him. We finally got him.
yeah.
We got Josh Wolff. Finally, we've learned all the secrets about armadillos harboring leprosy.
Mhm,
The
mhm.
things you learn about a coach. How much more does Austin FC need him than the Austin Zoo needs him at this point? Who's watching out for armadillo communicable diseases out there in the wild while this guy is over here coaching? That's the real question that should be on everybody's mind, not who is actually healthy and how much of that hemming and hawing we got was just to cover not wanting to say more than what we already knew about player availability for Saturday.
And you think we're kidding, right? You think that we're joking. This might be hyperbole when we're talking about, oh yeah, Josh Wolff. Certainly, he didn't really talk about armadillos pooping and leprosy, but judge for yourself.
Just got the armadillo. The armadillo was
Well,
color.
it's not stray.
Well, no, not yet. It's not. But I guess he made an impression on the weekend, or with when the commissioner was here. I think he had a couple accidents on some people, so maybe it was good luck. Yeah, that I can only view that as good luck.
We're not familiar with what
Yeah,
happened.
I don't know. That's just hearsay. Check Twitter. You guys, maybe it's on Twitter. I don't know. Twitter or wherever else stuff like that festers.
Would you like to see? Would you like to see a controlled live armadillo being
No.
brought out before the game?
No, not really. I don't. Little critters like that. I don't. Yeah, I don't.
Probably freak the animal out.
Well, they carry like armadillos have leprosy and carriers of that or something. So, or something like that. Or it's something.
That would be good.
Yeah, that's
Give
what I mean.
someone
Yeah,
leprosy.
no, it's we are in a delicate space with these critters. They are.
You're more of a mammalian
Maybe we'll
scientist.
rethink the
No,
whole
I
luck
won't.
thing.
I only know it because bird on your head, maybe it's good luck. The armadillo on somebody's shoulder, it was good luck. So I don't know.
Have leprosy.
The leprosy.
Press conference bingo card.
Yeah.
But we got there.
Can't,
we are.
Can't
The sad.
We got here.
This is
Back to medieval times.
this is where the conversation's gone, guys. But that's all right. That's
You
all
don't
right.
get TV people here, and that's.
Oh, it's a
that's
good.
what
Yeah, no,
happens.
it's good. It's good to get a little mixed bag. Mixed bag.
So there it is. We have
See,
the
what do you-
tape. We had the
Yeah.
tape. We have the tape. People, we're not just saying, oh, it's out. The people will watch the recordings of these press conferences. I don't know why somebody would have necessarily made the time to watch this one, but if they did make it
Mhm.
all the way through that one, then they would have gotten to this.
And this was towards the end of the press conference too, right? So it was initially just bluster, nothing. Yeah, Biru and Finlay are still questionable for Saturday, more stonewalling. And then all of a sudden, somehow we got him to talk about the armadillo. He just, like you said, the Austin Zoo, Texas's finest rehab zoo. You can find a lion that was owned by a drug dealer and other animals that are. It's really an amazing place. But we're risking going into a tangent. I did actually, though, when Josh did talk about armadillos and leprosy, I did look it up. I went to the CDC site. It's actually called Hansen's disease, and it does say in the southern United States, some armadillos are naturally infected with bacteria that causes Hansen's disease, and it may be possible the animals can spread it to people. However, the risk is very low, and most people who come in contact with armadillos are unlikely to get Hansen's disease. So apparently it's really tough to catch. Jesus, yeah, it was good what he did, but not necessarily the degree of difficulty that maybe we're led to believe.
Look, it makes me wonder where he got this random factoid in his head. Was it, he goes, I'm moving to Texas. I should look into the dangers. I should look into the scorpions, the road runners, the armadillos, all manner of different things that can be found across the wilds of Texas. Did he do some hardcore research, or did he just have the Nature Channel on in the background and just picked this up at some point? I feel like we're going to have to follow up on this, but there are far more pressing matters.
This is one of the stories of the season, clearly. We were trying to get him to talk about attributes of the team, and he went as far as saying that they're committed, they're collective. So I guess that's good. That's a start, but getting real new adjectives for this year to be able to plug into our stories and things like that, we didn't quite get those. But yeah, we did get this. And again, remember that there's actually an armadillo now, Speedbump. We've talked about Speedbump before, is in the crowd, is among the people with a handler. Doesn't appear with gloves or anything, right? Or it's just
freehanding it.
Yeah, risking hands and
That's a lot of trust. That's a lot of trust in your Speedbump.
It's so much trust.
Yeah, they're naturally nocturnal animals. To be serious for a moment, it was a cute gimmick the first time they did it, and I don't know if they've needed to necessarily do it after that. We get it. I guess it maybe is a nice thing for the crowd, but armadillos are naturally nocturnal animals. And I mean, if we're really going to do this every single game, every single thing, having the armadillo inside of Antone's when it was very loud and it was not Speedbump's natural time to be awake, the charm is worn off a little bit for me, if I'm honest. Now I've ruined the bit. Like, I've literally taken the bit and I've driven it right into the grave. To be serious for a moment, cute animal gimmicks are cute animal gimmicks, but do we really absolutely have to have that armadillo at every single game having to deal with those drums? How many hours, days, weeks are we taking off of this armadillo's life by celebrating it? Are we really defeating the purpose here? I'm your resident killjoy. That's what I am for this show.
I'm celebrating you as I'm traumatizing you at this.
There you go.
Is there a metaphor in here somewhere?
I don't know. We'll see how the season goes.
Emergency podcast. They did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, hurry up, shut up, hurry up, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we explore all the Austin FC emergencies that happen week after week, and also the good things and the various armadillos that wander in and out of our lives. Our guest today, of course, familiar face, familiar voice to all of you, Moises Chiullan. How you doing?
Great, man. I'm glad to be here on this crazy roller coaster of a week with 2 first-team games, the Scared Money Derby as we speak tonight, Friday night, the big All-Star announcement. Lots and lots of things happening around Austin soccer, which go back 5 years, and I don't know that people would believe that a week like this would happen in what is now one of the big soccer cities in the country. Attack me online, if you will.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable thinking back to when there were the city council meetings, and it's like, would there be a team coming to Austin? Would this be possible? Is there a stadium that's going to be built in this plot of land that nobody seemed very interested in until all of a sudden somebody wanted to put a stadium there? Funny how that works. So yeah, I think it's going to be obviously All-Star Game next year is going to be fantastic. There's a lot of good energy around it. If you are a person like me who does media and a person like you who does media around soccer, then it's a chance to interact with a lot of the familiar faces. Or if you're somebody who tends to listen to a lot of soccer podcasts, and if you're listening here, you probably are, a lot of those kind of familiar voices guiding you through your various MLS season and all those sorts of things that you follow in this world that we inhabit come and converge, and it's a really good time. And of course, the skills challenge is a whole lot of fun, and the actual game itself, it was mixed feelings. It was Arsenal, who we were both fond of, and we'll get into that a little bit towards the end here. Walloping on MLS, I was not necessarily fond of that. I was just telling somebody yesterday that I was kind of pulling for MLS in a booth full of media over to our left in one of the ends of the stadium, in the open air press box that Audi Field has. You had a bunch of Arsenal fans who were clearly American and clearly adopting British accents, and that was not great. So I do have an Arsenal tattoo on my arm, but I'm not with these people.
I don't know them. We have similar interests. That isn't to say that my similar interest is the same kind of that interest as theirs. I have a more refined palate when it comes to that certain interest. I actually taste the flavors going down, but these guys, they just guzzle it. They don't appreciate the bouquet of the arsenal. We've jumped right past what's the emergency this week, or is the emergency this week that it's an emergency week of emergencies? Emergencies left center.
I think, yeah, there are a cavalcade of emergencies. Like all of a sudden, we're going to have to host this All-Star game. And kind of my favorite things that came out of the day on Wednesday. We do have an actual team-related emergency. We will get to that in a second. But I did just want to get this out here. Andy Loughnane got to meet with media after Garber met with media after the event. And yeah, I had asked Garber a question, which was a Leagues Cup question, but also a little bit of a nudgy Open Cup question. And all of a sudden, the Murga started up like right below us. We were in this upstairs space. Did get clear audio from him, but not usable audio here because there's a bunch of drums and trumpets, but who doesn't love the drums and trumpets? But anyway, Loughnane was saying this is a Major League Soccer event. And I just joked with him that, yes, you'll probably be using that line quite a lot in the next year plus. And we laughed, but also I do think that is indeed what's going to happen, that the emphasis on the league, obviously the club is going to do, I think, some pretty cool activations around it. They'll certainly be involved in what's going on as the host team. But yeah, be clear that this is a league event, that a lot of what you're going to see, control over the stadium and all that, is going to definitely be MLS exerted, obviously in tandem with Austin FC, but MLS will take a lead role with this.
Yeah, a number of league folks that were hanging around made mention of how much they're looking forward to having to come here regularly over the course of the next year. And they didn't say it so much. Their eyes said it. Their eyes said to me, thank God, because Austin is such a different city than Columbus. They did not look like they have been particularly happy having to make regular trips to Columbus, some of them being newer employees. Again,
Right.
they didn't say this. I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble. I don't want to get, anybody thrown out of a job they just got thrown into. But there definitely seemed to be eagerness on their part of, yeah, I've got to do the boring event management, event planning kind of thing, but I'm thrilled that I'm getting to do it in a fun city. That's what attracts so many people to, great, let's do a version of our event in Austin, because God knows there aren't enough conferences and conventions and festivals and that sort of thing in the city as it stands. And I think there are some interesting opportunities, especially now that the Red Line stops at the station and goes all the way to downtown. Certainly, it's nothing like so many actual modern major cities with transit. But we actually have that as something that exists now. And it'll be interesting to see how they try to tie downtown with Domain Town.
Yeah. And I've been to a few of these. So in Minneapolis, St. Paul, there's a similar setup where you did have a lot of stuff that was downtown. And then there's a line that goes pretty close to the stadium. And of course, pretty close to the Black Heart, which is the world's greatest soccer bar, maybe next to Hop Squad. That was an opportunity to be able to use public transit in that way, be able to kind of shuttle between the things. So a similar setup. DC does have public transit, but the stop on the Metro line, you do have to walk some distance to get to the stadium. So as I found, and it doesn't run super late at night, which was on actual MLS All-Star night, a little inconvenient, you could say. Let's just say that I ended up on a rental bike and was struggling to find a place where I could park it near the hotel I was staying at. I got to bed very late and had to take a terrible early flight home, where me and an Austin FC employee were in coach and John Gallagher was in first class. Everybody had the same early, awful flight. It's just the experience that two of us had was, you could say, worse than the experience that the actual All-Star had. I think it's gonna be a good time, and I think the city's gonna do some really cool stuff. The club's gonna do some really cool stuff around it. Some of it will be cheesy. I will just warn you that now, because the league is involved and there is some kind of level of cheesiness to some of the All-Star stuff that they do. But I think it's got the potential to be really cool. And even the stuff that you might in other cities pass over, I think once Austin gets its mitts on things, might actually turn out to be worth checking out. So let's get to our actual emergencies. Really fantastic result on Wednesday. Definitely some good play, definitely some good defensive play, but not the most scintillating Austin FC match that we have ever seen at Q2 Stadium, except maybe until the last couple of minutes with the goal being scored on the corner kick and the revelry that came from there. But there's another game all of a sudden. So 72 hours after that kickoff, we get another kickoff. The weather is getting warmer. It's Sporting Kansas City is coming to town. They have been this year, but also they arrested Peter Vermees, obviously a wily veteran coach who knows Josh Wolff, who knows Austin. And yeah, just not much rest. And as you were there to witness today, Moises, Josh had thoughts about that.
Josh had thoughts, and there's some of the same thoughts that we have gotten a number of times, which is we do our best and we get good and rested and we have a great high performance team, best high performance team we could possibly have. And these guys are good. They're very good. Most of them are good. Tell us which ones are good and which ones are best at it. Nope, he's not going to tell us. But there are guys who do a great job of taking care of themselves and getting some rest. I talked to John Gallagher briefly after the game Wednesday night, and he said he talks to a sports psychologist that he got connected with who helps him mentally disengage, pull back from the adrenaline, let himself go back into a cycle of recovery mentally so that he can get back and get there. And I'm sure that there are other players who they must all have some sort of a practice, or we would see the wheels blowing off of them and them burning out, which we don't really have. I can't point to a particular player that visibly, from our perspective, has just gone too hard, has blown himself out, and is just useless. I mean, with the exception of injuries that take people out of games, it's difficult to point at any of these guys that seem like they are particularly bad at managing their stamina. I mean, for the most part, most of these guys have played in the league either with this team as their first team in this league or after playing for a couple of teams, so they know what the rigors of the road are. And Josh pointed specifically to this is a tough league, that it is a different experience getting on these planes over and over rather than just getting on a bus up to Manchester. There's a different vibe and a different amount of stamina that's needed and practice that is needed in managing that stamina, especially during these back-to-back weeks that are, of course, built to make way for Leagues Cup to happen in a few weeks. That's really the main reason the schedule congestion is here, because we know it's not for Open Cup, because that didn't happen. So
not for some teams.
Not for some teams, and not for some teams' first teams. But yeah, Josh got into it to an extent in ways that we've heard before. And I think as unboard as he could come off, having talked to us 36 hours ago and then another few days right before that and not having a whole lot to talk about, it's the same old song and dance. MLS is going to be MLS, and these players are going to be tired, and they're going to be running back-to-back games, and it's about conserving those resources. And I think the proof of this first part of this back-to-back run is going to be in what we see in the SKC game. Who is getting rested at first? Who gets brought in a little later? I think it used to be hilarious to me. Now I've just gotten used to it. That to me, one of the most exciting things that happened in that game was Josh Wolff did a triple sub. Oh, Josh Wolff still did. Josh Wolff did a triple sub, and none of it was like somebody who absolutely had to come out because of injury. It was something that I'm sure was calculated in the interest of conserving energy. But I think, I feel like some of the influence of Borrell has come into this, where a piece of it was also, let's throw in three fresh sets of legs worth of momentum. And as boring as things continued to be for just a little bit, I think that did end up helping make the difference. We got to that set piece in that game, and I know we were going to talk about this later, but I think that the letter that Rodolfo Borrell wrote to the fans in thanking the fans is something that, even though the sound in the stadium can be a bit muffled, we still have a very good vantage point and awareness of when you feel those momentum shifts in the stadium, the 12th man charge, and what the rev up to that corner kick of Emi Rigoni's reminded me of most, believe it or not, was that RSL game where Musajite scored that hat trick, because there was a similar summoning of something, whatever that extra thing is, whatever we call that. And as much as I think people were very quick to point to, oh, I guess season ticket renewals are coming soon, or I guess they're going to announce Josh's contract renewal pretty soon. I don't look at it that cynically. I really think taking as read, part of the reason that Borrell was attracted to this club is because he saw something very unique in that overperforming 2022 season. And despite all of the tiredness, despite a couple of injuries, I feel like when we've got Josh Wolff out there hyping up the crowd, for crying out loud, when was the last time, or have you ever seen him do that? I asked him about it. Of course, he did not directly address it and promptly dodged it like a defender in the way of him on the front line. I feel like we're in for something interesting on Saturday. The players are always hungry for a win, but there is that kind of special thing in the air that if they can find it, if they can grab it, we can go from boring to interesting in the span of 30 seconds, like we did Wednesday night. And what if that hit on the post that happened in the first minute of play, what if that had gone in?
Oh, yeah. I thought about that too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think it would have obviously that would have been a lot different. I think that could have been the start of a 3-0, 4-0 cascade. Yeah, I think it's interesting that just looking back to what Josh was saying with because we started this with the schedule congestion. But a lot of this is about, I think, momentum and trying to contain and control and focus energy. And I think that a lot of Josh's frustration, I think he gets that the league is going to do this and this is part of it. But obviously in terms of the Wednesday, Saturday, that just creates additional challenges, especially when you have these kind of imbalances, right? When you have to go with a squad that's not terribly rested against a squad that is. This happens in other sports too, of course. You do have in the NFL, you have teams coming off bye weeks, but it's not nearly the same, right? So everybody, I think, gets as much as you can in the NFL, ample time to recover, regardless of whether you get a bye week or not. A bye week helps a little bit, but it's not like these kind of crazy turnarounds that we have. We did ask about the possibility of maybe somebody like Micah Burton coming in, just because he does have fresh legs and he didn't go 60 or 75 or whatnot just a couple of nights earlier. But Josh made it pretty clear that absolutely not. That's not going to happen. Players that are with the second team have to play second team minutes and
They have to earn
their
it.
spots. Yeah,
And
yeah.
in Micah's place, in his position, as I've been keeping a very tight view on the second team, knowing that this seems to be the dynamic for the season and the vibe, they are not as short of players as they were. They are not as desperate for warm bodies to throw on the field and into the lineup. And watching Micah with a second team, I think he's a very talented player. I think he has a great deal of potential, emphasis on potential to really make a difference. He is getting run over top of by MLS Next Pro players, even in the form that SKC is in. I don't see a Micah Burton making a significant difference in the way that CJ Fodry hits the ground running and makes a difference when they put him on the field.
CJ I didn't say it was a great idea.
Oh,
I just thought it was an idea that might have that he might have considered.
I think it was exactly the right way to posit it so that he had to give us an answer, something declarative, because that's been the thing is if when he's asked, in generic terms, what do you think about a couple temporary agreements for Next Pro players? It's a lot easier for him to completely dodge that and leave it up to mystery because he wants to do this mystery box thing of, well, I don't want them to know my sacred lineup that is going to be the true secret to victory. In this case, you positing it that way with a player that you certainly knew was not going to get the call up, it gets a response, it gets a rise out of him. And there are two different kinds of rises you get out of Josh, from what I've seen. There is the one that is, screw you, I'm going to clam up and give you nothing. And there's the, no, that's ridiculous. Why would I do that? Here's why I would not do that. And here's what I'm actually going to do. And that's where you got a really nice, rather concise, but clear answer from him that they are not so short of players that they've got to pull that emergency break. But yeah, I think it was expertly deployed because I can't wait for Micah to be at the point where he can play those first team minutes, but he's definitely not.
Yeah, because once he actually gets on the field for a game with the first team, the stadium's going to explode. He's not exactly a homegrown in the sense that Deonda or somebody like that would be, but he is homegrown in the sense that he did come up pretty early in the academy's history and he's developed and we've seen him grow. And yeah, obviously from what we've seen in Next Pro this year, there's still some learning, there's still some growing that he's definitely doing. And this is, I think, going to be a pretty formative year for him in terms of figuring out, okay, what is his ceiling exactly? Because this year it seems like it's maybe a little bit less positive than it's been in previous years, but sometimes players will just hit these kind of weird dips and then they'll push through it and you'll see them as much better players later on.
I think tagging off of the Next Pro thing, it'll be interesting to see how Austin FC2 perform tonight against SKC2, who coined the scared money don't make money thing in the playoffs last year, and see if some of these young players, like Micah Burton himself, if maybe this is an opportunity for some of them to step up and start showing that potential to earn those first team minutes. That's until that game is played, we're just going to have to wait and see.
So let's move to a tangent. This is actually something that I put forth this morning here on Friday morning as we were recording this on late Friday afternoon. So Wednesday, while we were in Antone's getting bombarded with the selection of 90 hits that the DJ somehow decided was appropriate for bringing Carver on, and then hearing, yes, indeed, that there was going to be an all-star game, which we knew as soon as we got in there, which we knew before, honestly, we got in there. MLSPA Christmas happened. So basically twice a year, the MLS Players Association will release the salary guide, which will reveal what everybody is making. And that's useful, first of all, just to see what things in the rosters. It's to see basically, first of all, roster builds and what players are on. Obviously, the DPs are going to be at a certain threshold. Now we have a little bit more clue in from the league about TAM level players. That's something that was elusive in years past, but the league is doing a better job about that now. But just also seeing where some of those other players are, right? And how the roster is being built and what kind of money there is to spend on players to round out the bottom tiers of the roster in terms of salary, not necessarily in terms of performance, which was part of what we got into. So it's surprises in the way of this player is less expensive than we thought that they might be. And then on the other end of this, oh, we're paying a lot for this player and maybe something needs to be done, whether it is a buyout or it's hard to obviously rework a contract in the middle of it, but certainly there are some kind of contract levels to give you pause, particularly with performance. So a couple things that jumped out. So in terms of striker, which is of course a question that, again, last year we were spending, or Austin FC was spending $1.7 million in striker fees and got 10 goals out of that group of 3 players. Of course, Ghazi Zardes and Maxi Arruti, and then Will Bruin to round that out. This year we have Diego Rubio on a $350,000 base salary, which is something that we were expecting from Jeff Carlisle's report when Rubio got signed. And then, of course, that is a $390,000 guaranteed compensation, right? And then Ghazi Zardes, of course, is on $1 million, both base and guaranteed. That is quite a bit of money for Zardes and what he has been contributing in terms of goals. He has none this year so far. Obviously, he was pretty instrumental in the play that led to Dreezy's goal, as I'd mentioned in my article. But at the same time, it's like, maybe this is something that we need to revisit in the way of a buyout, because that's the other thing. Zardes also has a guaranteed contract through 2025. And obviously a great human being, somebody who scored over 100 MLS goals. But if you're paying $1 million for a player in MLS, you're expecting to have production. And if you're not getting production out of one of those higher paid players, that obviously becomes an issue, which is something that kind of obviously became an issue last year with Diego Fagundes once he got into that tier of salaries. Moises, do you have any thoughts on just kind of those 2 players in particular?
Well, so sticking to Zardes, the thing that has been the repeated refrain among the fan base has been, why is Zardes here? Why is Rigoni here? Neither one of these guys do much of anything. I have very much been a proponent of, it's been great watching Giassi Zardes do the job he was hired to do when he is able to do that. He was never hired to be the full 90 striker for this team. And he was also not hired to be the play an entire half striker for this team, because his legs just don't have that anymore. As a 10-minute striker, oh man, is he great. But is he $1 million base and guaranteed great for a great crucial 10 minutes of a game? Depends on how Rodolfo Borrell does the calculus on this team that he inherited big chunks of the roster for. To me, Zardes' value is better calculated against what the roster looks like on the other side of the summer transfer window. If various moves are made that make it where that is, I mean, if you're looking at dollar amount per minute, dollar amount per goal, like you said, he doesn't have any goals scored, but the deflector shield aspect that he has had in the box has been helpful in production overall. How many goals does John Gallagher have this season?
But he's being asked to do something different.
He's being asked to do something different. There's conventional calculus of how to look at a given player's value, and in his case, it's nothing about who he is personally. At the moment, it is difficult to justify that big of a salary spend from the cheap seats we have up in the northwest corner. It's difficult for me to say that the guy doesn't contribute anything, because he really has come in clutch in some of those crucial moments. In others of those crucial moments, it just hasn't happened. I do not envy Borrell being in the position that he's in, where he has the strictures of the MLS salary and roster structure combined with the roster that he inherited. And since Zardes was signed, it's been we're paying him how much? Remains to be seen, if you ask me.
I would push back on that a little bit in terms of veteran leadership, in terms of, yes, he can come in and do some things as a super sub. I think that's how he's being utilized now. But I think when he got the contract and got the money that he was on, I think they still figured that he had a few good years left. He grappled with some injuries. You look at his numbers even in 2022 when he bounced between Columbus and Colorado, like he still had somewhere in the neighborhood of close to 2,300 minutes. He had 25 starts. He had 33 total appearances out of the 34 games between the two, and he ended up still with 10 goals, right? So he was still double-digit goal scorer, even though obviously it was split between two clubs, and it was obviously a really weird situation, especially when he started the season with the Crew, and then it was obvious that he wasn't in the plans. Last year, he was less than 1,500 minutes and obviously 6 goals. This year, he's on pace to maybe break 1,000 in terms of minutes, and has only had 2 starts this year. So there's been a pretty accelerated drop off in terms of what he's been able to do compared to when he first got that contract. That was my real concern when he got that contract. It's okay, he's got this history, he knows the system, but he's had some durability issues over the last few years, and he's getting older. And then just to see how rapidly he's aged in his time here has been obviously concerning. And so now you've got this person who's locked into a 3-year contract, which is probably what you needed in order to get him here. But there's no way that you're gonna justify that spend.
Yeah, it's the complete inverse. The Rubio deal, which Borrell was incredibly proud of what he got him for. The rumor being that Rubio was originally planning to go back to his boyhood club, and the money just didn't happen. The deal fell through or something like that. And suddenly Rubio and his wife and 4 kids needed somebody to give him a solid salary where he could continue to earn his spot. And he took as good of a deal as he could get that feels like the Rodolfo Borrell model in the MLS system.
Right.
Which is, here is a stable, solid salary. Here is an environment where the player is going to come into. It is a family environment that they are going to be taken care of, and their kids and their partners are going to feel well taken care of. Roughly the same kind of thing that was attractive to Zardes about this, but without the, screw it, here's $1 million. For me, the thing with Zardes is not that I don't think that there would be better ways to spend that money or better ways to spend that roster slot. To me, it's, if you don't have something better to bring into it, why go ahead and do the buyout unless you've got a compelling reason to go ahead and do it? But I'm with you that there very well could be, there, in the world of hypotheticals, there are almost certainly better deals to be made than continuing to hope for the level of production he is capable of doing, which I feel like people are more optimistic, including the team that brought him into the club, more optimistic about what he would be able to do in terms of minutes than I was, having watched him play at Colorado, for example, where like the gas tank was not as full as it has been for a while now. But he is still a talented player. He plays team ball well, which you look at some of the younger guys. Obrian has still some of the same problems that he did at Dallas, where, oh man, he can cook with gas. He is lightning fast. But when he's got the ball, he is most entirely focused on, I am going to score, not I need to distribute the ball. If I can't actually get off a shot, I'm going to get off a shot. I don't care. So it looks spectacular. And I feel like there is something of it's easy to go the old man route of looking at what Zardes is able to do physically that he doesn't get some of the benefit of the doubt that the young bucks that run like crazy do. Because the thing that I will say that I have noticed consistently about Giassi is that he is always situationally aware. He doesn't always have a great option. He doesn't always have the legs to get under something. But if I were his teammate, I would appreciate being on the field with him, even if I knew he could not physically keep up with some of the other guys.
Yeah, I think Zardes does have that situational awareness. Yeah, I do think that he knows where he wants to be. It's just that I don't know that his body necessarily always allows his body to be where he wants to be. And with Rubio, yeah, going back to that and that salary and that difference, I think another thing that this reflects too is just there is more of a kind of realistic consciousness of the injury struggles that Rubio has, right? So he has been out with injuries the last couple of seasons. And I think that there's an awareness that part of what happened, I think, with that salary is just acknowledging that risk, right? That you might not be necessarily an every game player. Knock on wood, so far, he seems like he's taken care of himself and he seems like he stayed healthy and he seems like he's very capable of doing things. Although I know on We Are Austin TV on the Top Flight podcast, Hernan was making a joke about wondering about his like stamina, like his full 90 stamina, and was wondering if he was getting a little out of breath in how much housery he was engaging in.
Look,
over the course.
People worry about his legs. I worry about his mouth. He better not wear that thing out. That's the most valuable piece of real estate on that guy's body.
That is a skill, yes.
Oh man, I was aware of him and had followed him and seen him in countless games and knew him for his reputation and have a soft spot in my heart for that Chilean mouth on that guy. But until he came to this club and I was consistently watching him and seeing the things that the cameras don't always catch, they're not paying attention to the things that the action isn't right where he is. The way that he gets under people's skin, it really is an art. I like Felipe could take remedial classes from Diego Rubio and maybe up his level a couple notches. I don't think people knew how good this club was getting it when it came to this guy knowing how to get under the skin of loads of league veterans.
I think. Yeah. And also new players too, relatively new players. One of my favorite moments on Wednesday was just to watch the job that Rubio was doing on Ethan Barlow on one of the corners in the North End right in front of us.
It was a thing of beauty, right?
Yeah. It was just like so abusive in a way that like he knew that he could get away with it. He knew where the line was and he stayed just on the side of the line that he needed to. But you could tell from Bartlow's reaction just how much of an irritant he was. It was delightful.
It's beautiful seeing that. You never know who he's going to get to. There are people you expect, but then you figure out who his target of the game is. And just watching that little narrative happen on the side is its own entertaining thing to watch while the other guys are out there playing horseshoes.
And then in that case, it's, here's a center back I haven't been paying as much attention to as maybe I should have. So let me take care of this. Let me get this off the checklist. All right. So yeah, I did want to mention Obrian briefly. Obviously, there's some deals. Obviously, Bureau on 200,000, Heinz Ike on the perplexing $199,992 figure, obviously. But Obrian actually, interestingly, is making more than he made last year by some substantial margin. So basically, again, Obrian, of course, was cut from FC Dallas. It was a year he was making 382,500 base, and then that guaranteed figure was 467,100. So figured, he'll probably be on a little bit less coming in the reentry draft. But actually, he's not. He's on 495,000 base salary, 537,300. Again, where they arrive at some of these very exacting numbers, I'm not quite sure, but that's his guaranteed. So he's making about 30% more in base salary than he made last year. And of course, obviously, you're paying for speed. Speed is a premium. This team needs speed. This team needed a winger that was certainly younger, faster, could stretch the field, do the things that Obrian does. But I'm wondering, okay, is this paying as a premium? Like, how did this happen exactly, given that Obrian maybe didn't have the kind of level of maybe kind of negotiating power that you would think he did compared to maybe someone that was a pure free agent that had a pick of teams to shop from?
Yeah, it similarly to me feels like a bit of an outlier, but I think a piece of the mystery there is knowing the player's personality, knowing their mind. If a deal needs to look a certain way for them to feel a certain level of respect, could they have maybe shaved something off of that? Maybe they could have. Maybe as something that Borrell said in one of those press conferences about you have to take into account the mentality that a given player is in, what stage of life they are in, what their family life is. Do they have a young child? O'Brien has a young child. Building a family as a young guy and having not the best of experience with a given club, do you get more actual production out of somebody by maybe spending a little bit more than you have to, not flashing the discount card, bringing out your coupons, and getting the lowest dollar amount deal that you can? That might be great in Football Manager, but when it comes to actual human beings and not dealing with AI, I can see it as a strategic move to go, we believe in you, we respect you. You need to understand that there are things that we need to do to sand off the rough edges of you. But we believe that there is so much more in you than was seen by other clubs. And that's something that, honestly, even for Borrell, the club has had that reputation of, you were not appreciated at this club, or you were being disused, or you were not being implemented to the peak of your capability. And you're going to come to Austin, and you're not only going to have an enjoyable space for, off time, a comfortable community that you can live in, raise a family, that kind of thing, but we are investing in you. And it's not going, guess what, we're going to way overpay for you. It's, you understand that we don't have to be doing this level of a deal for you based on the way the market is, but we believe in you more than we believe in players in a market are objects to just be thrown around. You're a person to us. You matter to us. That's the kind of personal touch that we've heard from Brendan Hines-Ike, who came late to camp. We've heard from all sorts of different players who have both been in the mix, past and present. And I think that is really where that number came from.
Yeah, and that's actually a good place to transition. You talked about Roto's personal touch. So the last thing that we wanted to hit today is a couple hours ago, a letter came onto the Austin FC site from Rodolfo Borrell, who talked about how impressed he was with the stadium coming together for that key corner kick in the match against Houston, which of course led to the Driussi goal and the celebrations and the good feelings that come not only with getting a win that put the team back over the weird kind of 4-4-4 mark that they had been at, but also beating Houston is always a good thing when you are an Austin fan. So what did you think of that letter? What was your...
I'll say this to my haters out there, because I know they exist. I think I have something of a reputation of very much being into the personality and the vibes and that side of the story thing. And real stats heads, do not see me as one of them, because I'm very much not one of them. Do I pay attention to stats? Sure. But to me, the beautiful thing about this club and covering this club are those moments of special air. Like I mentioned earlier, that RSL game where Musa got that hat trick. We couldn't have known the things that he had been going through personally, but we didn't need any of that background. Being in the stadium on that day and seeing that and feeling the energy from the crowd, there are moments like that peppered throughout the club's history. And Borrell opened his letter saying that since he joined the club last July, he witnessed this thing that he has not witnessed. And he is talking about exactly what I'm talking about here. And it is something we've seen multiple times. And I tell you, I didn't think about it really until I reread this as we were prepping and getting this off to the races. I really take this as read, because I cannot point to another moment of the air getting special the way that it did. For some reason, I don't want to make myself out to be some sort of prophet of some sort, literally the last thing I would want. But as Emmy lines up for that kick, I stood up in the press box next to you and I said, I'm just standing up to stretch. I don't think this is going to go in, but what if it does?
Right.
Wouldn't that be great? Jokingly.
And lo and behold.
And then, look, I should be a betting man in moments like that. And you get that tingle. You get that, you've got to be kidding me. I can't believe that just happened. I can't believe what I just saw. Something happens in the wind. Something happens out there in quantum space. And all of a sudden, something nuts happens. That, was it clean? Was it perfect? Was it beautiful? No, but it got the job done. And it blew the non-existent roof off that stadium.
Right.
That's the thing to me. There are people who, are going to grouse anytime anybody from the front office of any club, says something, puts out a statement or something like that. And as much as I can tell, Borrell engages in a little bit of theatrics, a little bit of, fencing with the press and that sort of thing. I take this letter completely as read. This is This is Burrell going, guys, this is why I joined this club. This is why I saw this as the project to do, the thing that I wanted to work on. This is why I came here. Thank you for giving me this. Because I think he sees his role as sporting director, not just getting the roster in line, getting the academies cooking, outdoing the Frisco puppy mill, in produced talent and sales to Europe and that kind of thing. I feel like that was his opportunity to stand up and go, yes, this is why I'm here. And after winning the treble with a horrible club that shouldn't be named on this air, of course.
The team that we are wanting West Ham to beat the pants off of on.
I've always been a fan of the Hammers. It's well documented. I feel like they got it in them.
One of my two favorite teams for the next 48 hours.
Coming over from that kind of result in Europe, this is him, no BS, saying engagement with the fans is part of this. It's part of building this legacy. It's part of growing the legend, all that stuff that I think is some of the most interesting marketing in the league was building and crafting the club's image around that. Yeah, this is Burrell saying there needs to be a more permeable barrier between the club's corporate side and the fans. There needs to be this kind of outreach and recognition, not just people in suit jackets looking on approvingly when fans do a bunch of stuff that costs thousands of dollars for free that ends up marketing the team, like tifos, like banners, like all kinds of different stuff. This is Burrell continuing to extend the olive branch. And I think that it bodes well for a fan base that wants the friendly but independent relationship with their club that it feels like a great deal of the fan base wants. They want to have their own organic personality. They want this recognition for this gigantic amount of effort that they put into this stuff.
Yeah. And the thing is too, it was teetering on the edge of being this kind of dismal draw on a Wednesday against a team that people aren't necessarily really fond of, right? So coming to Austin. So it had this kind of bleak wellness that was formulating around it in the final moments. And all of a sudden you got the whole stadium energized. You got this really transcendent moment. And we've seen that before, like the aforementioned GT hat trick or the comeback craziness of the 4-3 game against SKC. For me, it was really the RSL playoff game and just having the tying goal that sent it into extra time, and obviously the PK sequence and just how magical that was and how big Stuver came up in that you have these moments that, yeah, this is what it's about. This is why if you're an owner, you buy a team. This is why if you're a player, this is the kind of thing that you fantasize about. It comes down to these really transcendent moments that you take away. And those are the things that are really special about supporting a club when you do ultimately think about it. And for us covering it, that's where the most rich narratives come from. And those are obviously really fun, right? And we've talked about this before, this kind of idea of having the journalistic remove. And like immediately when the goal happens on Wednesday, I'm like, okay, that's at the other end of the stadium. I'm trying to figure out what happened. Yeah, I think that was Driussi, but how did the ball get where it was? And then figuring out on replays and on the Apple TV screen that I immediately pulled up once that happened. It's okay, here's all this that happened. And yeah, I don't know if you've seen the Alistair McAllister narration yet about that.
Look, that guy, I mean, that
stopping to appreciate the clean air and the ball sailing. That's 8 Dynamo players.
I'll say this: the work of Alistair McAllister, journalist par excellence. I think I said that in his native tongue correctly, or maybe that's the wrong language. Clearly. Who knows? Yeah, same difference. I see his as the living scripture of football globally. And I don't go to church because I just listen for the good word from our friend Alistair. I wish there were Alistair merchandise out there because look, he's not affiliated with the team. That doesn't encroach on my unbiased perspective. When you get a real good Alistair video, you know that it's been a good night at the stadium. When you get a really good Alistair video, it could also be a totally disastrous night at the stadium. But there's a special extra tinge to it when there's something positive about it, like this one.
Yeah, I could see a have a sit down wee man shirt selling really well.
Look, let's just retire. We'll shutter Verde all day, and we're just going to set up the Alistair McAllister McStoriker.
Right. We're just gonna market. Just gonna market
Just market
our
Alistair.
Scottish friend. All right. That brings us to the end of another emergency podcast, another emergency. We don't know what emergencies will ensue after the SKC game, but obviously there is more fixture congestion in May. So certainly there's going to be a little bit of a break, but we're going to get into another fun Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday sequence that comes up after this game. And one of my favorite rituals in all of sport happens after this SKC game, which is a San Jose away game. Hooray.
Oh, but before the San Jose away game, and this will probably factor into your emergency next week, is what the Copa Tejas standings look like after Houston hopefully beat Frisco. Houston, who are statistically eliminated from Copa Tejas at this point.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Really, it's either Austin and Dallas mathematically now. Like there's no way
they have it. I believe
I should know this, but
I believe I think the way that, because I've run out various different models of what could happen. I think Austin beating Houston on Wednesday made it statistically incredibly unlikely. They have exactly one path in which they have to win all their remaining matches, and also we have to have a particular result against Dallas, which it could happen. Crazier things have happened, but if Dallas beats them, they are statistically completely out. But what we want for the narrative, because we are a narrative in team at Verde All Day, is that we want Houston to beat Frisco, and that makes the July 17th game Austin's opportunity to clinch it.
Which of course will be in Frisco. So that seems like an appropriate place to clinch it. There's a parking lot I know that will be ready should they win. But you're right. Houston does have that one path. I did in the grading addled corners of my brain realize that yes, there was that one path, but it is contingent. It does start with beating Dallas on Saturday, which we want just because that is more fun. That keeps Houston fractionally in it, and then also gives Austin kind of the easiest path to deliver the death blow to Dallas for this year's Copa Tejas, as it were. That think of that July 17th game as that happens as Kendrick releasing Not Like Us.
Thanks for having me, Phil.
Okay, absolutely. Thanks for being here, and I think we'll end on that winning metaphor.
Where's Phil? He usually starts this off.
He's teaching in San Antonio today. Colby, go ahead and start us off.